Welcome back to the In No Hurry podcast. This is your host, Cole Douglas Claiborne. Excited to be back with you guys this week for another episode. And I'm excited to introduce you to a new friend of mine. His name is Stephen Glosser. And this week we get to talk about his newest book, which is called Everyday Adventure: How to Live Your Ordinary Life to the Fullest. And obviously, the name of the show is In No Hurry, and so we talk a lot about how do we slow down in the middle of a busy life? How do we just enjoy the life that we have without getting caught up in all the hustle and craziness that is around us? And that's a lot of what his book is about. And he really writes about his experience hiking and just being outdoors. He lives up in the Big Sky country, which is an area of the country that I would love to spend a lot more time in, and we get into talking about that. But I'm so excited to bring this conversation with you just about how do we appreciate the ordinary life? How do we make every day of ours an adventure and appreciate what God has for us right here in front of us? The way he explains his book is that it's basically about waking up from autopilot, slowing down enough to notice everything that God has around us. And I know even whenever I am in the middle of something, I have a hard time just being present. And if you remember a few episodes back, we talked to Hannah Brencher about her book, The Unplugged Hours. And that conversation was all about how do we unplug and stay present. And I think in this day and age, that is such an important conversation to have. So I'm excited to bring this conversation to you with my new friend, Stephen Glosser. Stephen, welcome to the show, man. How are you? We just met not too long ago over Instagram and chatted for a minute before we started hitting record. So nice to meet you. And my listeners are probably going to meet you as well, maybe for the first time. Maybe some know who you are, but excited to have you on the show. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me on. I'm pumped to be here.
Yeah. So I know you said you're from Fargo, North Dakota, and I feel like if I saw correctly, you lived or do you live in Minnesota? Did you live in Minnesota? Is that true
Yeah,
as
so
well?
Fargo Moorhead is kind of like sister
Okay.
town. So technically I'm on the Minnesota side in
Okay.
Moorhead, but I always say Fargo, this is where I went to college and have spent a lot of time here. But technically speaking, yeah, I am a Minnesota resident.
Okay. Does that make you a Minnesota Vikings fan?
It does. It does. I think the next closest team is the Broncos. And
Yeah.
so
I'm a
that's tough.
Chicago
We
Bears
live.
fan, so that's why I had to
Oh,
ask.
okay. Well, it's good to talk to you. Have a great. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, been a Vikings fan for the most part, my whole life. But
Okay.
we've kind of bounced around a little bit too.
Yeah. North Dakota is, I've been to South Dakota. I loved it. And I keep telling my wife, I went on a vacation when I was a child, and I loved it. We took an RV from where I lived in southern Indiana. We drove it all the way up, drove through Sioux Falls, went through Mitchell, South Dakota, saw the Corn Palace, and ended up
Oh yeah.
at Mount Rushmore. But North Dakota, I have never been. I used to love watching Aerial America on the Smithsonian Channel. I don't know if you've ever watched this, but it basically is
Nope.
it's just a flyover of states. And
Okay.
this is the nerd in me coming out, but everything about North Dakota looked beautiful. And so I'm curious, what is your take on North Dakota and people that are listening and me? How would you sell them on what do we need to visit about what do we need to visit if we go and see North Dakota?
I love that. I love that the flyover painted such a
Yeah.
beautiful picture of our state.
Well, it was like,
Uh,
isn't the Teddy Roosevelt National Park there?
it is. It is.
Yeah.
We've got the Badlands out west. That would be my number one encouragement for somebody. It is beautiful. There's some fun stuff. You get
I've
some
been
of
to
the
the Badlands in
history.
South Dakota. Do they go up to North Dakota as well? I guess I
They
didn't realize
do.
that.
Yep,
Okay.
yep. It kind of the painted mountain. It's a really cool. The painted hills. It's a really cool spot. It's unlike a lot of other places. The majority of our state is very flat, and a lot of ranching and all of that stuff. But another big spot is Fargo. I mean, I've lived here for a long time, and it's just grown a lot in the sense of there's things to do here and. But yeah, it's usually when I meet people, it's usually one of the, oh, I've been to 48 states. That's one of the two I haven't been to. And so I totally understand it. I lived on the East Coast for a couple of years and I had a lot of friends say like, "Oh yeah, someday I'll come and see you." And that day hasn't come because it's not a state that people just gravitate towards. So I
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah. That the
It's
the
the
Big
people.
Sky.
It's the people.
Okay, yeah. The Big
Yeah.
Sky country is just an area that like I want to spend more time in. Have you been to Montana? That's another one that I want to add to my list.
Oh, absolutely. Montana, I mean, the western side of Montana is kind of spillover North Dakota, it's
Yeah.
similar, but once you get into the mountains, it's a place that a lot of us try to get to as often as we can to get a higher a higher altitude, see things from a different perspective a little bit. But it's a yeah, beautiful place.
See, like I've always lived in the Midwest and then now I guess technically the Mid South. So winters to us are brutal in our mind, but I'm curious,
Yeah.
like what is it really like? I mean, how long does the snow last? How do you manage the absolute brutal cold that you deal with and all the snow and ice and all that?
Yeah, I think people think we just get used to it. I personally haven't. Like, I don't know if you can get used to -20. We just get longer, so it's prolonged. It comes earlier and it stays longer. And sometimes we get a lot of snow, and then on the terrible winters, we don't get any snow, and we just get brutal cold. And
Yeah.
so, I would say we it's an interesting place. People like we moved into our house that we're in November, and this is several years ago. We didn't know people lived in the houses in our neighborhood until May, because it's just like people are inside and um but at the same time, I think my kids are teaching me. I've got 7, 6, and 3-year old. Like they actually want to be outside when it's cold, and I'm like, okay, I just need to like man up a little bit and get some warmer clothes or something. But it's kind of the way of life. You just kind of navigate it. But I can't imagine being here in like the 1800s when there wasn't heated homes and vehicles to transport you. I don't know
Yeah.
how they did it then. That's for sure.
How do they handle like where I live or where I have lived, even just a little bit of snow can knock out school for a week or two. And everybody that's like, moves here from the north, they're like, I lived in Wisconsin and this is nothing. How do they handle school? Like, I guess you guys maybe just have completely different mechanisms for how to treat the snow, take care of it that
Yeah.
we don't have here.
Well, first of all, yeah, the infrastructure of just snow plows, it's like it's a whole thing out here. So it's just fleets of, and a lot of people do it as side hustles.
Yeah.
They got plows on their trucks. So usually the snow isn't the problem. The most common times it gets canceled for school around here is actually extreme cold. So
Really?
once it
Okay.
hits a temperature, the wind chill gets to like the -30, -40, they won't let it happen because kids can't stay at bus stops and
Right.
all
Yeah.
that stuff. And honestly, I grew up getting a few snow days, but it's changed. Our kids had more cold days this year than normal, but
Yeah.
I think it's just an excuse to like do the online school
Yeah.
thing. And after COVID, it just kind of the
Yeah.
tolerance level seems to have dropped even up here a little bit. But
Yeah.
back when I just remember trudging through snow and just figuring it out.
Yeah, when I was teaching, I taught in Indiana for 3 years, and then the year that COVID hit, I did not teach that year. I restarted teaching again in 2020 after I'd gotten settled here in Kentucky, and so I kind of had a very clear like before and I guess kind of during or after
Yeah.
COVID, and after COVID, and I always had this thought too, even whenever I was at my school in Indiana, it was like, why? I would say as a teacher, I loved having a snow day. I loved it, like just like I did as a student. But I was like,
Yeah.
we have technology. We probably don't need to have traditional snow. I didn't say this, but I was thinking, I was like, we probably don't need to have these. Well, after COVID, they caught on and they stopped having snow
Yeah.
days, and then they would make us log on to Google Meet and have kids do school virtually. And I'm like, half these kids aren't going to show up. So I don't know that the students have traditional snow days quite like we did. I mean, maybe you remember as a kid, like I don't know if it was like this for me. It was like the joke is, kids find out now that their school is canceled by a text message versus like I had to wake up and I was watching like the scroll on the bottom of
Oh
the
yeah.
news, like it was
Yep.
the NBA draft or something, try to see like is my school canceled? You'd see the nearby districts and you're like, please show mine, and they show. I'm going back to bed.
Oh, absolutely. I think that movie Snow Day that came out when I was a kid is very accurate. It's just
Yeah,
like snow day, it's an excitement. All the kids get outside and have fun out of it. And yeah, they don't get that anymore. I was setting up Zoom on different, tablets that they bring home from school and trying to do tech support and work a job, and you know how that goes. So
yeah, that's great. Well, yeah, I was really excited when you reached out to me and you kind of described your book. It's called Everyday Adventure, and the way you described it, you said it's about waking up from autopilot, slowing down enough to notice God at work in the ordinary, and discovering the deeper life He's inviting us into right where we are. Obviously, the name of this show is In No Hurry. Feels like a
yeah.
perfect conversation for us to have. And so I'd love for you to walk me through where did the heart for this book come from? What was sort of the impetus and Uh, how did you go about connecting that idea to making that story into a book form?
Yeah, I think we live in this place that we were talking about. There's uh, not a ton of opportunities in the landscape and these things to have adventure per se. So we go places. And so I was on a trip with friends. We went to Montana. We were doing some backpacking and some camping. And we came back from that trip, and I was sitting in a college class, just kind of like daydreaming and kind of miserable that I was back and I wanted to be there again. And I just had this thought kind of rise up in me of just, what if you treated every day like an adventure? And that kind of started this couple year just kind of almost exploration of like what does that mean? Like what does it mean to show up to Tuesday and live it like an adventure? And just started to kind of realize that if you pull out the headphones on your walk to class, there's actually people on the same sidewalk as you that you can talk to. And just realizing that it wasn't the thing that I had to deal with inside of me is the thing I think a lot of people have to deal with, and that is that someday I will, someday my life will start. Once I graduate, once I
Hmm.
uh, have enough money to buy the house, or once I get married, once I have kids, and we just keep moving that line farther and farther, and so we just keep delaying life. And I realized that adventure is closer than we think. It's actually right here. There's an opportunity for it today, and so it's kind of a link of that. And it was my sophomore year of college. Started a blog called Everyday Adventure. I would say I wouldn't want people to find it, but I did link it in the end notes of my book, just for fun, in case somebody wants to. The
Yeah.
first blog post was about a tailless squirrel that lived under the dumpster across the street, but it was a way for me to kind of express myself and to work out this idea of like, what if adventure is just paying attention to more and experiencing more of life, and being awake for it.
Yeah, I love that. I think we live in this world. I mean, we're talking over Zoom, so we're using technology.
Yeah,
We use our cell phones. We're on technology all the time. But I've seen a lot of people post lately just about like kind of lamenting what life used to be like before we had all this connectivity. People going on a walk and they're like everybody's got their AirPods in or they're on their phone and nobody is acknowledging people around them. And I feel like we have a hard time just being present. And I've been watching. I don't know how old you are. I'm 36, and so I grew up.
35.
Okay, so we're right
Nice.
in the same era. So I we grew up in sort of the our lives are unique as millennials then because like we grew up sort of pre internet technology type things and like social
For sure.
media, but then also learned to navigate life with it. So we have memories of what life was like before we were attached to our phones. And I've been watching, like, I don't know if you were a big fan of like Dashboard Confessional or any of that kind of music back in the mid 2000s. It was like kind of
I mean, a
emo
little
music.
bit. Oh yeah. Yeah,
So
yeah.
they had this iconic uh set that they played. It's called MTV Unplugged. You can go to YouTube and watch this. And they just played a bunch of their songs and everybody in the crowd is just engaged, singing in the moment. Nobody's got even a camera. And it's like you can't go to a concert now without people just every song. They've got their phone, they're holding it up, recording something. And I tried to make it a point for me when I do something like go to a concert or go hiking or do anything. Like there's times whenever I want to take a couple memories, but if I know the band is about to play a song that I really like, I want to be in the moment and like sing it and enjoy it. So I'm
Yeah.
curious, like in your as you've been writing this and just living your own life, have you noticed that same tension where it's like we just have a hard time being present, enjoying the moment? I think I had a conversation with actually one of my favorite authors, Hannah Brencher. She had a book that she wrote called The Unplugged Hours, and it was all about this same
Hmm.
topic. And she's like,
Yeah.
anytime that I've unplugged from anything, I've always been able to enjoy and savor a moment much better versus feeling like I had to document it and share it with people. So I'm curious what your take is on that, how you kind of navigated that idea, or if that was, anything that you've struggled with and want people to be thinking about as well.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think 100%. I I actually came across this study a number of years ago, and it was called Alone Together, and it was these pictures, and it was essentially um, uh, everyday kind of moments with the screen, but the screen was removed from the picture. And so it was a family, and they're at a dinner table, and everybody's looking down at their empty
Yeah.
hand. They're just holding nothing. And it was really just this powerful picture of we are missing, thinking that we're catching up, and the I think the pull of all that technology is that you can be everywhere at once and you can experience all these different moments and you don't have to miss anything, and it's FOMO, just
Yep.
to the 10th degree. But the visual of this alone together thing was that we were missing everything that was actually happening in our real life. And I think that was kind of a wake up for me too, and part of this journey of just recognizing like there's the cool thing about every adventure I've ever been on, like quote unquote adventure, is that I was fully there for it. I mean,
Yeah.
most of the time when you're in these places, your technology doesn't work. You're with your few friends or your family that you're with, and you're experiencing it all. And that's the stories you tell for years and years to come. And I mean, I just had the alert on my phone that I was out of storage, and I started going through my videos, and all these videos that they're terrible quality. It's all that stuff. And I'm like, what was I thinking would happen?
Yeah.
And so I think I've definitely dealt with that. I think we're all in this kind of, we're placed in this time in history where the current is to be distracted. The current is to be everywhere at once. The current is to kind of keep up with those latest and greatest things. But I think it's all at the risk of missing out on what we're actually doing and
Yeah.
missing out on where we're actually at. And so I think that's part of the call to this, and it's my own journey. So I don't write this from the standpoint of I'm the expert and I know everything there is to know about this. There were
Right.
things uh, that I've realized I left out, and I'm like, or that I'm learning still in this
Right. Yeah.
journey, in this process. But I think there's a reason the analog movement is on the rise. They're saying that some of the analog stuff is going to be some of the biggest things to jump on board with. Brick, for instance, is just growing exponentially of people putting a device on their fridge that shuts their phone down. And
Yeah.
it's fascinating to me that there is such a pull towards it, but I think something has to change inwardly before it actually takes root.
Yeah. I think that's, I mean, I struggle with being on my devices a lot.
For
And as
sure.
much as I want to tell myself to be present, it's hard not to. And one of the things that I've really tried in the last few years is, if I went on a vacation, I almost felt like I had to post every day of it to document it. And part of it was like, oh, well, when I see my Facebook memories next year, I want to see what happened on this day. And then I started being like, who cares if I post like there's half the time whenever I won't post about a vacation or anything until like a while back if I post about it at all. And it's like I want to be able to live in the moment and just enjoy it. And yeah, I'll take some pictures if like, we're doing something that's fun, but I really have tried to just enjoy being where I'm at. And I've heard people pose this question. It's like, how would you handle a vacation if you couldn't take your phone to document it? Would you still want to go on it? And some people have, I'd be willing to bet that some people would not be as excited to go if they couldn't share that they were at this cool place. And I know I'd be guilty of that. Like if I went to some awesome island and I couldn't share about it, yeah, I'd be like, dang, I really want people to know that I'm here. But also, you kind of makes you check your motives. Like, am I going here because I want to enjoy this, or am I going here because I want people to like know that I'm here? So I'm curious kind of your perspective on that in terms of like what have you learned about yourself and then also about God when you've done better about remaining present in some of these situations.
Yeah, there was a recently, well, not recently. God, recently is a crazy thing when you think of 10 years ago, but
Yeah.
I was on a trip and I was in Mexico and we were gonna do the zip line thing. It was me, my wife, and her sister. And we pulled up and there's all this excitement. We're gonna zip line, we're gonna do all these high ropes courses. And then they made us turn in our phones or lock our phones in a locker because they weren't allowed. And I remember like my stomach dropping of just like, oh no. And the reason was because I couldn't show the world this cool, exciting, fun thing. Look at how adventurous I am. And what's funny is that at the end of the thing, you can buy the pictures.
Yeah.
And I realized though, like $50 wasn't worth it to tell the world about it. Like I got to experience it, and I remember how rich that felt to just be there. Like me, my sister, or my wife and her sister, we can reminisce about that. We can remind ourselves about that trip. And we have a picture outside of it that can kind of spark that, but it's one of those things that now it's now sacred between the three of us because we were there for it. And I think that's been my experience. And I've got three young kids, and I think the picture that they get most often, or maybe not most often, but the temptation is that it's me and my phone on the couch while they're watching the movie, or at the dinner table just checking something. It's usually good intentioned and it just drifts, all that. So I think the thing that I've really learned is that I can only pay attention to one thing at a time. I can only be one place at one time. And this is a limitation that God has put on me for my benefit and for my good. And that's the thing I've learned about God, is that the limitations that we experience, Adam and Eve in the garden, for instance, them not eating from the tree, like the serpent wanted them to believe it was God was holding out on them. No, God actually had placed them in the place that they were supposed to be, that they had everything that they needed. And the lie that we always believe, and it goes back to that first opportunity, was that I can do better on my own. And so I think for me, it's actually been that conscious effort of realizing what it is that I'm missing out on. And I'm missing out on those eye contact moments that we forget about, that happen when our kid looks at us and we're not there. There's a disappointment that happens in them. And it's funny because if you're ever in like on a couch with your spouse and you put you're both on your phones, you put yours down and you look at your spouse and she's on her phone, you feel a disappointment, even though you were just doing that 30 seconds ago. Maybe just me, but
No,
like I felt that, and I'm like, that's my kids experiencing me over and over again. And so I've just realized, like, for myself, I want to be present, but for the people around me, like, I want them to get the best of me, not the distracted version.
yeah, I so agree with that. And I look back, you were talking about, your phone running out of storage and looking back at old videos, and there are times where I am glad that I have a video of something, especially like if it's at a concert, or like sometimes, like there was one, this is actually fun. I don't know if you ever listened to the band Angels and Airwaves, but
Uh-uh.
so it's Tom DeLonge, who was in Blink-182. It's one of his other bands that he did.
Okay.
And my favorite song of theirs is actually called The Adventure. And it has been my favorite song ever since I heard it. And so this idea of, an adventure, I always think of that song. And we got to go see them play live in St. Louis in 2019. And we were like right by the stage. And my wife was with me. She doesn't really care about the music. She was just there along for the ride. So I was like, look, I really want to be present in this moment. So can you take the video of this? Because I do want to have this video. And so there's moments where I'm glad I have it, but for the most part, if I have looked back at videos, I'm like, first of all, I don't really go back and watch videos that I take all that often. Like if it's at a concert,
Yeah.
like I have it, but then it's like I'm not just sitting there watching it. So really, the benefit of me taking the video, it would have been better for me to just be there in the moment and be present.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have found that half the time whenever I've tried to just record something or document it, never really ended up being worth it because I'm not taking great photos, and frankly, I don't really care if people, think I'm super cool because I went on this trip or I took these really artsy photos on my vacation, this and that. Like I go on vacation with my wife and I enjoy it, and that's good enough for me, and I can tell people about it. But yeah, I don't feel like thankfully I don't feel the need anymore to like curate my social media to show how great my trips are, how great my life is. And I know that that's still a struggle with a lot of people. And I'm not saying I don't struggle with it all the time, but uh or at all, but I mean, it's just I'm thankful that I've been able to see the beauty of just being present. So people that have read this book or you talk to about this book, what have been some of the biggest takeaways and that they have had from the book, or what lessons that have they gleaned from the book, and how have you seen this idea sort of, I guess, put into practice in other people's lives?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things I hear the most is just this idea of um, the mundane is not something that we have to avoid or escape. It's something that we can embrace. And what I mean by that is that a large percentage of our life is spent doing very mundane things.
Hmm.
Over 80% is folding laundry, doing the dishes, getting ready for
Yeah.
the day, wrapping up at the end of the night. It's doing mundane things that are going to be repeated. And what I've tried to do is create an invitation for people to not necessarily bypass those or find the quickest way to escape them, but to lean into those moments. And so whether it's a meal, that we're preparing, like who else can you invite to share that meal with? That's an adventure. Or I've heard of people doing this where they will make a meal for themselves, make it for one other person, and show up on a doorstep of a friend or somebody that they just say, "Hey, I've got two meals here. It's going to be awkward if they don't want to eat it with you." And so like there's things that we can do, or even just the laundry thing. As my wife folding laundry one night, we had like the 3 basket pile up. It was a mountain, and this happens almost every day or every third day or whatever it is. And she said it never stops. Like that was what her comment was. And then her next words, and she's not like a philosophical person. She's a very like in the moment, fun, bubbly. I'm the thinker. She just kind of goes with the flow.
Yeah.
But she then said, "But someday it will." This never stops, but someday it will. And in that moment, it just dawned on us in a fresh new way that someday we're not going to be folding, Monster Jam t-shirts. We're not going to be folding these little flower dresses that our daughter wears. And it brought us back to reality of like this season is sacred and it'll never again be repeated. And I think that's kind of something that people are taking away from it. I think another thing that people are really landing on is just this idea that life is a miss, that we're not guaranteed anything. I share in the book a couple stories of losing somebody
Hmm.
that have really impacted my life, and the biggest impact it's made on me is one, recognizing that nothing's guaranteed and that we only get this one life to live, and how do I want to live that? But the other thing is how quickly we have these epiphany moments after a loved one, and we go back to losing a loved one and we go back to normal. And I think a lot of people reading those stories thought of their own, because we all have those stories. And I think it was an invitation to remind ourselves, like, man, like the Bible says, Jesus came to give us life and life abundantly. And in Ephesians invites us to make the most of every opportunity. Well, what does that mean? Like, what does that mean to make the most of every opportunity?
Yeah. That's great. I love that idea. And it's cool to see like the image that you put out there of like we're not going to be able to fold our children's laundry like this for that long. And I think that's beautiful of like, hey, yeah, it sucks to fold 3 mountains of laundry, but what a gift it is to have our child's laundry to fold. And I saw somebody post it very similarly. It was like, what a gift it is to be tired at the end of the day doing the thing that I want to be doing. And so I think we often lose sight of those simple things. We start thinking ahead and we start thinking about just different things that life brings us, and it removes us from the present moment, and honestly, sometimes can prevent us from enjoying the present moment
Yeah.
as much. So I'm curious from your like just the art and writing aspect of this, like the crafting of it thematically, how did you sort of envision this book? Whenever I think about writing a book, which I'm trying to do, I think about kind of how I'm going to carry the message from chapter one all the way through the end with the idea, the umbrella theme of it. So, how did you kind of carry that idea from chapter to chapter, weaving kind of your story, biblical insights? I'm just curious about the writing process that you went through.
Yeah, I mean, I think I had this kind of grand idea I started with, and it was really just the simple idea of every day can be an adventure. And then really stepping into those ordinary moments. Well, an idea is not enough to carry a book or a story. And so it really was kind of this pick it up for a year, set it down for 4. And it was really difficult to stay focused because I didn't really have that dream. And I'm actually going to grab something quick. Here. This is kind of a mind map, and
Yep.
I've framed
Love
it.
it. Love it.
And it says everyday adventure, and in each of these boxes is a different idea. And I know there's many ways to kind of formulate and to put ideas into some sort of theme. But it was about 6 years ago that I kind of sat down and I said, if I want to finish the book, I need to know what it is and where it's going. And so I started to take these ideas, put them on paper, and then I saw these links between it. And, when I really thought about it, the idea of adventure isn't just wild, reckless living, climbing mountains as much as that's a part of it, but there's an intentionality. There's a course that you follow, or like you understand where you're trying to go, and it's one foot in front of the other. There's this idea of adventure and complacency cannot overlap. And I realized every moment, season, experience of adventure I had is one in which I stepped out of my comfort zone. It was one in which I was living in a place of curiosity. And then finally, adventure is for those who refuse to give up. And there's many people that have set out to summit Everest or do all of these incredibly adventurous things, but the ones that are telling the story are the ones that push through the pain. And I think that was the part of the book for me that I realized in hindsight was the most important, because I think without the perseverance aspect of it, the resilience aspect of it, adventure is just kind of like butterflies and rainbows. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, that's such a fascinating, fun idea, adventure. But true adventure is really the experience of overcoming. And it's the experience of battling through and living to tell the story. And so that for me isn't all these harrowing near-death experiences. It's simply, showing up at a job and losing the interest in being there, and fighting through it and finding a way to embrace it and enjoy it and make a difference in a place that I'm struggling in. And it's a marriage that is, on the brinks of quitting, and well, what does it look like to persevere through this? Because that's the adventure. Those are the stories we live to tell. So I think once I was able to see it all, then it kind of was, all right, now I've got my buckets. And I was able to start to fill those buckets with those stories and actually go, okay, this isn't just a pointless story. This belongs here. This actually amplifies. So that moment changed everything for the book. And we shuffled it after that. I,
Yeah.
had a mentor that was really helpful and basically said, what's the chapter you're most excited about? And I told him, he's like, okay, move that one up because we need that one to pull us in. And so
Hmm.
just little things like that just helped it all kind of, but the framework freed me to put the words to it, to give it that trellis structure to kind of grab hold of.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. First of all, I love the idea map that you showed. I think it's in my closet here. I have a big for a previous book idea that I had, it's like a big poster board that's got sticky notes and like different ideas underneath it. And it was my
Yes.
way of organizing it. And I used to have that up in my room to look at. And I've since shifted ideas for the book. But you mentioned you kind of would work on it for a season, then put it down for a season. That's been the story with me. I get quite intimidated by writing a book. And so I've been fortunate to have signed with an agent, but I still haven't finished like following through on the process of writing the proposal. And a lot of the feedback, because I've been trying to get it through a traditional publisher, and a lot of the feedback that I get is like, hey, you don't quite have a big enough platform yet. And I'm like, well, I don't know when that's going
Yep.
to happen. So I'm curious, did you self-publish? Did you go through a publisher? Did you run into any of those same kind of issues? And how did you, I guess on top of that, how did you fight through any of that resistance or struggles that you felt in the writing process?
Man, that resistance is something I love to talk about, but I did self-publish and
Yeah.
I had a privilege of getting to intersect with some really incredible people in the book industry. So agents, some different publishing options, there's hybrid publishing, there's all these incredible options now that weren't in existence 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I think it's a great time to write a book because of that. But for me, I think I had the conversations of, hey, your platform's not big enough. If you can't sell 5,000 books on your own, it's going to be hard to get a deal.
Yeah.
And I had two options in that. And I could either kind of wallow in that and kind of resist the system. I had a friend who heard that same thing and he decided, well, I'm going to dedicate 1 year to just building the platform. And he did that. He gained 145,000 followers. He built an email list of thousands and thousands of people by just showing up
Dang.
consistently. He did a reel
Yeah.
a day, stayed on track, stayed on topic when 40 people viewed it or when eventually millions of people viewed it. But for me, I just said, okay, that's going to put 2 to 3 years onto this. And I was ready to get this thing out into the world. So I just kind of buckled down and said, all right, I'm going to self-publish. I'm going to do my research. I'm going to pull some people in. I've got the book here. Like my best friend in the whole world. He's a graphic designer for a sporting goods store, but he did the cover and
I
his
was going to
wife.
ask about the cover. The cover's awesome.
Yeah, my friend Ryan Ham,
Yeah,
he's
that's a cool
fantastic.
cover.
He's very artistic, and his wife, she's a designer as well. She's a photographer. She does all these things, but she did the inside. So she worked in, Illustrator and all those layout, not Illustrator, InDesign.
Yeah.
Um, she does a ton of work in those spaces. She had never done a book before, but we just kind of Googled a lot of stuff and we just kind of figured it out together. I had friends that are English teachers that did editing and really proud of it, not only from like the standpoint of the hard work of writing and putting words into a book, but just the community aspect that I got to experience. We launched it with 170 people and people sharing everything that I was posting, people texting friends. We had 25 states represented on my launch team. And it was just like this life-giving, fun
Yeah.
thing. I'm moving forward. I'm writing another book, and it's just kind of like, well, I'm going to go with that unless something else happens. And it's just really freed me to not like feel like I need to rely on somebody else to give me the break. It's like I'm just going to keep writing words and telling good stories that impact people in a positive way. And whatever comes of that comes of that. But I've got messages to share that I'm going to get out. But I think that the resistance thing, there's years where I felt like I was told pause, like you need to live this out. You need to experience this. And then there was years of fear. Like there's years
Yeah.
of what if nobody reads it? What
Hmm.
if it doesn't land with anybody? What if my mom and grandma are the only ones that read it? And then my grandma passed away. I'm like, oh, I'm down to one. Like there was just all these moments
Yeah.
of that. But I think one of the biggest things was just the my own internal insecurity, and I had to
Yep.
realize the stories that I was sharing were ones of stories that I've been telling myself for a long time. There were reasons that I quit basketball before tryouts because I feared getting cut, and
Yep.
I stopped playing baseball before I could be told that I don't belong, that I'm not good enough, or whatever the case is. And I realized that this is a pattern, a story in my life that I keep repeating, and it has differing levels of consequence, but I'm breaking that with this book. And I think the act of finishing has just given me a lot of confidence in my calling, in how God's wired me. Each story I hear or thing I hear about the book is really great, but the joy and the satisfaction came when this was birthed into the world in a public way. And honestly, when I went public with it is when something freed up in me because now I have people asking me at church on Sundays, like, when's the book coming? And
Yeah.
I had people checking in on me. I had people, hounding me for the book. And it was really actually helpful for me to go, okay, there's no turning back,
Yeah.
press on.
That's so cool to hear. It sounds very similar to my own journey, and I've just been so hell-bent on the idea of like, well, I want to pursue traditional publishing, and the
Yeah.
more and more I go down that road, it's like I have done some things to progress toward that goal, but it's just I mean, people that are listening to this, the platform thing is just you can do everything right, but if you don't have the platform, it really doesn't matter. And so I feel like that's going to continue to be the issue that I run into. And so I've had a lot of people that have encouraged me to go the self-publishing route. So I may pick your brain on that if that's where I ultimately decide to go, because I think that it sounds like there's a lot of freedom in just finishing the product. Because like you, I have people that are asking me like, when's the book coming out? What's the update on your book? And I'm like, still kind of waiting, this and that. And I think there's been definitely seasons of fear and apprehension, overwhelmed. Then I get seasons of really, I'm excited to write and I feel really inspired. And then that goes away after a little bit. And so I just have struggled with just the creative process of it. But I have a
Yeah.
lot of respect for how you went about that and just, organically use people that you knew and tapped into friends that like, hey, you can edit. Why don't you do this? And I'm sure it was such a reward it's such a joy to see that come to the end. And obviously, like you want to see the end product, but I got to feel like the process of going through all of that and just the art of creating it was a
Yeah.
lot of fun. Because for me, that's where a lot of the fun comes. I wrote an essay on Substack about this a couple weeks ago. Basically, like, for me, the joy in the creative process comes from the middle part where you're struggling, because that's what makes it a reward at the end. If you take shortcuts, it doesn't really feel as rewarding. So I'm curious if that was probably part of your story too, is why it felt so rewarding.
Absolutely. I mean, I think um just the fighting for words and like there was that aspect of it. And once the words were kind of where I wanted them to be outside of some minor editing, that process of putting it all together, it was stressful. It was just like, we didn't realize how long certain aspects of it would take. Like when I do it again, I have a different kind of roadmap for myself. But in doing so, I mean, there's just many core memories that were developed through this process with some of my best friends. My best buddy who did the cover, we got lunch together every week for like 2 months. We hadn't done that. We lived together in college and we didn't even do that.
Yeah.
And it was, project oriented, but it built our friendship even stronger and hanging out with him and his wife at midnight for a week straight to get everything right on the interior and stuff. It was just like the significant. They came over to our house the night that we hit publish, and it was just such a cool experience to walk through with those people for sure. But I would say like for me when it came, I've always wanted to be traditionally published, and I still would love that. But I think the
Yeah.
biggest thing for me is it's like the same reason that I loved getting the book into Barnes and Noble in my town. It was like it was a badge of honor. It was like this cool thing, and I'm okay to admit that about Barnes and Noble. Like my book's at Barnes and Noble. That's
Yeah, that's
fun.
cool. That's really cool.
Like my friends have texted me pictures of my book at
Yeah.
Barnes and Noble. But
Yeah.
I think that was the thing with traditional was I didn't understand it to the fullest extent, and that's why I'm still like, hey, if that is the what happens in the future, I'm pumped about it. But I met with an agent. He's a really successful agent, has a lot of incredible authors underneath him. But one of the things he told me is, hey, you can probably scrap your way. You can send 100 emails to publishers, to agents, and you can probably get something to work. But here's the thing is you're going to care more about it than anybody else will. And my background in marketing, my background in creative endeavors, he just said like I'd bet on myself because when it comes to selling the book, like they don't have a magic wand that they can just sell infinite copies. Like you're gonna scrap for podcast episodes, you're gonna scrap for speaking engagements and to try to platform your book and your message because it matters to you more than it does to them. And I think that was kind of like an unlock too, was, you're right. And I'll say this, getting 100% of the royalties is pretty great. Like my investment is done in the book and now the reward is fully experienced. And
Yeah.
I've done a lot of digging into the hybrid publishing industry, and I think that's another fantastic option too. Is you invest on the front end into the resourcing and the abilities that they have to put a book together, to lean on professional editors and graphic designers and all of those things. You don't have the headache. And then you get the reward, you get the royalties. Their get is the upfront. And I think for somebody that has some resource on the front end, like that's another fantastic option. So I think that's the benefit of it. But for me, it was like, why do I want to do it X or Y? And once I made the decision, it freed it up.
Yeah. That's really cool. I know there's people that are listening. I hope there's people that are listening that are maybe wanting to write a book and they're struggling with the same thing. I know just me personally, like that's some of that questioning was for my own benefit because I'm just curious to your process because it's something that I'm
Yeah.
considering. But anybody who's listening that's considering writing a book, I think they can learn a lot from your experience. So that's really cool. Congratulations on getting it out there. Again, the cover
Thank
is
you.
beautiful. I really like the cover of it, the colors, the font, all of that. It's a really cool cover. So yeah, the name of the show, it's In No Hurry. I'd mentioned this kind of at the beginning, but the last question I love to ask my guests is just sort of for you when life gets crazy and busy and you're looking to slow down, what are some of the hobbies or things that you do, rhythms in life that you rely on to peel back and just slow down a little bit?
Yeah, there's a number of them. We prioritize meals together as a family. That's something that we've really leaned into, is that it becomes a pause moment. And when you protect the meals, you make different decisions. So whether that's how many sports we say yes as our kids get a little bit older here, when we do the gym, when we do those things, it kind of creates that that moment, that margin for us to have conversation. And another one is uh, Sabbath or whatever you want to call it, but it's changed days. I worked in ministry for many years, and so Sunday was a pretty intense work day, and it drained me, and it was fun and great, but Saturday kind of became that day. Well, now we've chosen to choose, Sunday as kind of a day for rest for our family. And so we try to get the chores done Saturday. We try to get everything buttoned up, laundry, all that, so that Sunday we can just go to church together as a family, have a slow lunch, and just enjoy the day. Our only rules for Sundays is that, we enjoy it with people that we want to spend time with, that we do things that we want to do, that we choose analog over the digital as much as possible in those days, unless it's a movie that we're all together on a couch snuggling. That's the exception. So I think for us, it's been a couple of those big ones that have made the biggest difference. And then also, I call it heat therapy. But one of my biggest slowdowns in my life is I go to the gym that we have a membership at, and I circulate between the sauna, the steam room, and the hot tub, and it's fantastic.
There you go.
It's my one place where it's just me. When there's other people there, but it's just me.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. Well, Stephen, where can people connect with you? I know you and I connected over Instagram, but where can people connect with you and find the book? And if they want to follow your work, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, Instagram at Stephen Glosser is the number one spot to go. You can kind of find all the branches from there. We do an everyday adventure challenge every week where we challenge the community to figure out a way to apply this to our lives, to start living this out. And so we've got a broadcast channel. I send out a weekly email. So yeah, there, and then stephenglosser.com is my website. And so there's some different free resources there, different ways to keep up. I kind of get sporadic on where I write. I have a blog, I have a Substack, but I do a newsletter every week called the Twosletter. And so you can go to my website and find that really easily and catch some of my thoughts, what I'm going through. But yeah, those are a few of the places.
Awesome. Well, Stephen, thanks so much, man, for joining the show. Thanks for sharing your heart behind the book. And I love hearing the writing process, the creative process. That's one of my favorite things to talk about on the show with different creative people, is just hearing their process, because I feel like I can always learn a lot from that. And so appreciate you letting us in on that. And I really hope people receive this book well. I pulled it up on Amazon, so obviously it's on Amazon, and I guess they could find on your social media where to buy it as well. So encourage anybody out there, if nothing else, but for the cover alone. The cover's cool. Tell your friend who designed it that I said the cover's really cool. So thanks so much for sharing your heart behind it and joining the show. And it was awesome to talk with you.
Hey, thanks so much. And to your whole community, keep leaning in. This is an awesome place. This is an awesome conversation to have. Love it.
Well, that was such a fun conversation. I always love talking with fellow millennials who I can relate to about our upbringing, our experiences in life, and just the way that we view the world. And I know that Stephen and I have a lot of similarities, so I was excited to have him on and chat about his new book. I definitely encourage you to check out his book. The cover of it is beautiful. I'm excited to get my hands on it. And if you are watching on video, then you saw him hold the cover of it. If not, if you're listening to this, check out the links in the show notes, find the book on Amazon, and go ahead and purchase it, because the content is great. Also, it'll just look beautiful on your bookshelf. So if you've got a bookshelf that you like to display books on, this is going to be a good one. But again, many thanks to Stephen for joining me on the show. I really had a good time talking with him, and give him a follow on Instagram, Substack, wherever you can find him. And I would love to connect with you on Substack as well. That is where I've been spending a lot of my time on the internet. I don't really like the other ones as much anymore, to be honest with you. Substack is just a lot better. So if you want to find me, I mostly am hanging out on Substack. You can subscribe to my newsletter, The Road Ahead, where I write a lot about millennial living and helping Gen Z and millennials navigate this crazy busy life and finding rhythms to slow down. So a lot of what Stephen and I just talked about. So if you want to follow for more of that, check out my newsletter on Substack. It's in the show notes, along with every way that you can follow me and Stephen. But as always, thanks so much for listening, and I hope you guys find some time this week to relax and not be in a hurry, and we'll catch you next time.